My name is Samantha Taylor, and at 37, I discovered my husband of 12 years was having an affair. The evidence? A series of text messages planning a romantic dinner with someone named L. After the initial shock wore off, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to cry or scream or beg. No, I had a different plan brewing. While Jason thought I was oblivious, I was making my own reservation, at the table right next to theirs. The cool composure I maintained masked a storm of emotions beneath. Before I dive into what happened next, Jason and I met during our sophomore year at Northwestern University. I was studying interior design, and he was pursuing a business degree. We literally bumped into each other at the library. I dropped my coffee, he spilled his books, and amidst the chaos we fell in love. It was the kind of meet-cute you see in movies, and for years, our relationship felt just as magical. After graduation, we moved to Chicago together. I started building my interior design portfolio, while Jason climbed the corporate ladder at a marketing firm. We married 2 years later in a beautiful lakeside ceremony surrounded by friends and family. Everyone commented on how perfect we were together, how our energy seemed to complement each other perfectly, and for a long time they were right. We bought our first home together when I was 28, a fixer-upper that became my passion project. Jason celebrated every milestone with me, just as I cheered him on through promotions and career shifts. We made the mutual decision not to have children, instead focusing on our careers, traveling extensively, and enjoying our freedom. It was the right choice for us, and I never regretted it. Our life seemed ideal: successful careers, a beautiful home, exotic vacations, and what I thought was a rock-solid marriage. But about 8 months ago, things began to change. The shifts were subtle at first. Jason started working late more frequently. He'd come home smelling of a new cologne I hadn't purchased for him. His wardrobe gradually updated with shirts and ties I hadn't seen before. Small things easily explained away, but they piled up. Then came the password changes. His phone, which had always been open to me, suddenly required a fingerprint. His laptop was always closed when I entered the room. When I asked about these changes, he'd get defensive, citing client confidentiality or new company policies. Our intimacy suffered too. The passionate man who couldn't keep his hands off me became someone who was too tired or too stressed. Kisses became perfunctory, conversations superficial. The deep connection we once shared seemed to be evaporating, and I couldn't figure out why. For our 10th anniversary, Jason took me to Paris, a trip we'd been planning for years. But even surrounded by the city of love, something felt off. He was constantly checking his phone, disappearing for work calls that left him looking flushed and distracted upon return. One night, I woke up at 3 a.m. to find him on the balcony, smiling at his phone in a way he hadn't smiled at me in months. My best friend Allison was the first to voice what I couldn't bring myself to consider. During our monthly lunch date, she gently asked if everything was okay with Jason and me. When I assured her things were fine, just busy with work, she hesitated before saying, "Sam, I've seen this before. The late nights, the new clothes, the emotional distance. You deserve to know if something's going on." I dismissed her concerns immediately, perhaps too defensively. Jason and I had been together for over a decade. We'd built a life together. He wouldn't throw that away. I trusted him completely, or at least that's what I told myself. But Allison's words lingered, joining the parade of small doubts that had been marching through my mind. Still, I pushed them away. Our marriage wasn't perfect, whose is? But it was solid. We had history. We had love. At least that's what I believed. Our home, a beautiful 3-bedroom Victorian in Lincoln Park that we'd lovingly restored, suddenly felt too big, too empty. I found myself wandering through its perfectly designed rooms, wondering how spaces filled with so many beautiful things could feel so hollow. Jason and I were like polite roommates, sharing space but rarely connecting. I started sleeping poorly, analyzing every interaction, searching for clues about what was happening to us. I tried initiating date nights, cooking his favorite meals, suggesting weekend getaways, all met with polite appreciation but no real enthusiasm. The man I married seemed to be fading away, replaced by someone who looked like him but didn't love like him. Despite the growing distance, I still couldn't bring myself to believe the worst. There had to be another explanation. Maybe he was dealing with work stress he didn't want to burden me with. Maybe he was going through some sort of midlife crisis at 39. Maybe I was overthinking everything. I chose to believe in us, in the foundation we'd built. I chose to be patient. I chose to trust. That trust was about to be shattered in ways I couldn't have imagined. It was an ordinary Tuesday in April when everything changed. Jason had left for work earlier than usual, claiming an important client meeting. As I was straightening up our bedroom, I noticed a phone charger plugged in on his side of the bed. The charger wasn't for his regular iPhone. It was for an older model Android phone I didn't know he owned. I found the phone itself tucked between his side of the mattress and the box spring. For several minutes I just stared at it, this physical evidence of secrets kept. My hands trembled as I picked it up, torn between respecting his privacy and needing to know the truth. In the end, my need for truth won out. Just the basic calling and messaging functions. And one conversation thread with someone saved simply as L. The first message I read froze the blood in my veins. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Jay's away all weekend so we can spend the entire time together. Miss your touch already. My fingers scrolled mechanically through months of exchanges between my husband and this L. Laura, as I would soon discover. Their conversation was intimate, explicit at times, filled with inside jokes and pet names. They discussed memories of weekends spent together while I thought Jason was at business conferences. They exchanged photos, nothing explicit, thankfully, but intimate nonetheless. Her face smiling up at him from a pillow I didn't recognize. His hand holding hers across a restaurant table. Then I saw the messages about their upcoming dinner. Worth celebrating. 6 months. While I was trying to save my marriage, rebuilding connection with a man who was already connected elsewhere. The physical reaction came first. A wave of nausea so strong I barely made it to the bathroom. Then came the tears, silent at first, then evolving into gut-wrenching sobs that left me curled on our bedroom floor. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it difficult to breathe. I don't know how long I stayed there, cycling through shock, denial, grief, and rage. My mind replayed every late night, every business trip, every evasive answer, recategorizing them from coincidence to evidence. 6 months of lies. 6 months of betrayal. My first instinct was to call him immediately, to scream and demand explanations. I actually had my phone in hand, his number dialed, before I stopped myself. Confronting him while he was at work, while I was a mess of emotions, wouldn't serve me well. If I wanted answers, real answers, I needed to be strategic. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, going through the motions of normalcy while my world collapsed around me. I canceled my afternoon client meeting, claiming a migraine. It wasn't entirely a lie. My head was pounding with questions and realizations. That evening, when Jason came home, I performed the hardest role of my life, the unsuspecting wife. I served the dinner I'd mechanically prepared, asked about his day, smiled at appropriate moments. If he noticed anything off about my behavior, he didn't mention it. He was too busy explaining why he'd need to work late on Friday, setting up his alibi for the anniversary dinner with his mistress, a marketing executive who joined the company 8 months ago, fresh from a divorce, according to her social media profiles. I spent hours scrolling through her Instagram and Facebook, torturing myself with images of the woman my husband had chosen. She was beautiful in an obvious way, 29, blonde, with the kind of gym-sculpted body that required serious dedication. In comparison, at 37, I felt suddenly inadequate, though I knew objectively I was still attractive. I kept myself fit, maintained my dirty blonde hair with regular salon visits, and was often complimented on my green eyes and warm smile. But in that moment of discovery, no amount of self-confidence could withstand the blow of betrayal. The comparison was inevitable. What did she have that I lacked? What was Jason finding with her that he couldn't find with me? These questions haunted me throughout the sleepless night. By morning, and with that realization came the beginning of a plan. For the next 2 days, I moved through my life on autopilot, maintaining the facade of normalcy while plotting my next move. Tell all our friends and family about his infidelity. Each had its appeal, but none felt right for the situation. It was while reviewing the messages about their upcoming dinner that inspiration struck. The reservation at Maison Rouge, their anniversary celebration. The perfect setting for a confrontation neither of them would ever forget. I spent that afternoon researching the restaurant's layout, studying photos online, and even calling under the pretense of planning an event to ask about their seating arrangement. Maison Rouge was known for its intimate atmosphere, with tables strategically placed to allow both privacy and people watching. The maitre d' mentioned their most romantic tables were along the east wall, no doubt where Jason had requested to sit. Using my maiden name and a seldom-used email address, I made my own reservation for the same night, specifically requesting a table adjacent to the east wall section. Especially after I mentioned possibly booking the venue for a major corporate event in the future. With the reservation secured, I turned my attention to preparation. This confrontation would be public, it would be dramatic, and I would be damned if I didn't look absolutely stunning for it. I scheduled appointments at my favorite salon for the day of the dinner, hair, makeup, the works. I wanted to look like the best version of myself, not someone desperate or defeated. Jason had never seen it, and it accentuated every curve while remaining elegantly understated. I paired it with my most expensive heels and the diamond earrings I'd received for our 5th anniversary. The final touch would be the absence of my wedding and engagement rings, a detail I knew wouldn't go unnoticed. I rehearsed what I would say, crafting a script that was dignified yet devastating. No screaming, no public breakdown, those would only make me look unstable. Instead, I wanted calm, controlled anger that would leave both Jason and Laura uncomfortable in their own skin. I practiced in front of my bathroom mirror, perfecting the tone that conveyed both strength and hurt. After 3 days of planning, I needed to confide in someone. Allison listened without interruption, her expression shifting from shock to rage to concern. "Are you sure this is how you want to handle it?" she asked when I finished. "It sounds satisfying, but it's also very public. Once you do this, there's no taking it back." "I don't want to take it back," I replied, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. He chose to have this affair. He chose to celebrate their anniversary at a public restaurant. I'm just making sure the reality of his choices is equally public. Allison studied me for a long moment before nodding. "Then I'm with you. Do you want me to be there? I could sit at the bar, be ready to step in if needed." Her offer touched me deeply, but I shook my head. This is something I need to do alone. For a night or for as long as it takes. With Allison's support secured, my determination solidified. I fabricated a business trip to San Francisco, telling Jason I'd be leaving Thursday and returning Saturday evening. His poorly concealed relief only strengthened my resolve. He even offered to drive me to the airport, an offer I declined, saying I'd booked a car service for my early flight. The days leading up to Friday were excruciating. Each night, I lay beside the man I'd loved for 12 years, now a stranger harboring secrets and lies. Each morning I smiled and kissed him goodbye, playing my role in our crumbling charade of a marriage. I watched him check his secret phone when he thought I wasn't looking. I noticed his extra attention to his appearance on Thursday morning, a new haircut, his most expensive suit. My pain was evolving, hardening into something that felt almost like power. I was no longer the unsuspecting wife. I had information, I had a plan, and soon I would have my dignity back. By Friday morning, as I pretended to leave for my fictional business trip, I felt strangely calm. Jason hugged me goodbye with promises to miss me. That tasted like ash. Little did he know. Our next meeting would be only hours away, in circumstances neither of us would ever forget. Friday unfolded with surreal clarity. After leaving the house with my overnight bag, which I promptly deposited at Allison's, I spent the day preparing. My salon appointments left me looking polished and confident. My normally wavy hair blown out straight, my makeup subtle but flawless. As the stylist worked, I kept my expression neutral, giving no hint of the emotional hurricane brewing inside me. Back at Allison's, I changed into my carefully selected outfit. The black jumpsuit fit perfectly, simultaneously sophisticated and striking. I added minimal jewelry, just the diamond earrings and a delicate bracelet my grandmother had given me. No wedding ring. That empty space on my left hand felt oddly liberating, as if I was already shedding the weight of betrayal. Allison watched me get ready with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You look incredible," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Strangely calm," I answered, and it was true. The frantic energy of the past few days had settled into a focused resolve. Like I'm watching myself in a movie. Just remember, whatever happens tonight, you have support. You have people who love you. This doesn't define you. Her words steadied me further. I hugged her goodbye, promised to call if I needed anything, and headed to my car. The drive to Maison Rouge took 20 minutes that felt both eternal and instantaneous. I played no music, preferring the clarity of silence. Memories flickered through my mind, Jason and me on our first date, our wedding day, holidays and quiet Sunday mornings, and all the small moments that build a marriage. Soon all of that would officially become the past. Maison Rouge occupied the ground floor of a restored historic building downtown. Its understated exterior belied the opulence within, a calculated exclusivity that made its tables some of the most sought after in the city. I arrived 30 minutes before Jason's reservation, giving myself plenty of time to be seated and composed before their arrival. The maitre d' greeted me with practiced charm, checking my reservation and leading me through the dimly lit space. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables draped in cream linens. The air was perfumed with subtle notes of saffron and truffle. Under different circumstances, I would have appreciated the elegant ambience. True to my request, my table offered a perfect view of the east wall section, while remaining partially obscured by an ornamental plant. I could see them, but they wouldn't immediately notice me. The maitre d' pulled out my chair with a flourish, handed me the leather-bound menu, and departed with assurances that my server would arrive momentarily. I ordered a glass of Cabernet, needing something to steady my nerves but careful not to dull my senses. As I sipped slowly, normal people enjoying normal evenings, unaware of the drama about to unfold in their midst. Time moved strangely. I checked my watch compulsively, maintaining the composed exterior that would be crucial for what came next. At 7:35 I saw him. Jason entered the restaurant with confident familiarity, looking more handsome and animated than he had in months. My stomach clenched at the sight of him. This man I'd loved, this stranger who'd betrayed me. He spoke briefly with the host, then glanced toward the door with barely concealed anticipation. Laura arrived moments later, her entrance causing Jason's face to light up in a way that pierced my heart. She was even more striking in person, tall and slender in a deep blue dress that complemented her blonde hair and fair skin. As they embraced, I noted the easy intimacy between them, the comfortable way his hand rested at the small of her back. This wasn't new. This wasn't casual. This was a relationship. I watched as they followed the maitre d' to their table, indeed along the east wall, 2 tables away from mine but with perfect sight lines. Jason pulled out Laura's chair, leaned down to whisper something that made her laugh. They settled in, immediately reaching for each other's hands across the table, creating their own intimate bubble. Their server approached. I observed them for several long minutes, cataloging the small gestures of affection between them. The way she touched his arm when laughing. The way he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The meaningful glances exchanged over their menus. He looked happier, more engaged, more alive than he had been at home in months. My hands trembled slightly as I set down my wineglass. My heart pounded against my ribs. A voice in my head offered one last opportunity to retreat, to leave unnoticed, to confront him privately at home, to spare myself the public scene. My legs felt simultaneously weak and strong, like a novice tightrope walker, terrified but committed to reaching the other side. I smoothed my jumpsuit, took a deep breath, and began the short walk that would forever divide my life into before and after. The 15 steps from my table to theirs seemed to unfold in slow motion. I moved with deliberate grace, until I was standing directly beside their table. It was Laura who noticed me first. Her smile faltered, replaced by polite confusion as she looked up at this stranger interrupting their evening. Jason, still gazing at her, continued speaking mid-sentence about weekend plans at a lakeside cabin. Our lakeside cabin. Thought we could drive up after breakfast and... He stopped abruptly as he registered Laura's expression, then turned to follow her gaze. Aren't you going to introduce me to Laura? The silence that followed was deafening. Nearby conversations quieted as diners sensed the unfolding drama. Laura's confusion deepened, her eyes darting between Jason and me. Sam, Jason finally managed, half rising from his seat. What are you? I thought you were in San Francisco. Clearly, I replied, then turned to Laura. I'm Samantha Taylor, Jason's wife of 12 years. Laura's face drained of color to match Jason's. Wife? She whispered, staring at Jason with dawning horror. You said you were separated. Filing for divorce. That's news to me, I said, maintaining the calm that was clearly unnerving Jason more than any screaming could have. We sleep in the same bed every night. Share meals. Plan vacations. He's wearing the watch I gave him for our anniversary 3 months ago. Jason was fully standing now, desperation evident in every feature. Sam, please. This isn't. I can explain. Explain what exactly? I asked, loud enough for nearby tables to hear clearly. Explain the secret phone you've been hiding between our mattress and box spring? Explain the texts about your 6-month anniversary tonight? Explain the weekends you were supposedly at conferences but were actually with her. Laura pushed back her chair abruptly. I should go, she murmured, reaching for her purse. Actually, I'd appreciate if you stayed, I said, surprising us both. You should hear this too, since it appears you've also been lied to. Something in my tone, perhaps the recognition of our shared status as Jason's victims, albeit in different ways, made her slowly sink back into her seat. Jason's shock was evolving into defensive anger. You went through my private phone? You followed me here? What kind of? Don't. I cut him off sharply. Don't you dare try to make this about me invading your privacy. You've been living a double life for half a year. You've lied to my face every single day. You've made me question my sanity, my attractiveness, my worth as a wife and a woman. I turned to Laura, whose expression had hardened into something closer to anger than embarrassment. He's been coming home to me after being with you, sleeping in our bed, making excuses about working late when he was building a relationship with you. Did he tell you he took me to Paris for our anniversary 3 months ago, while he was seeing you? Laura's gaze snapped to Jason, who had the decency to look away. No, she said quietly. He said he went alone, to clear his head about the divorce. There is no divorce, I said firmly. Or at least, there wasn't until now. Jason attempted to regain control of the situation. Sam, the table you reserved while lying to me about working late. The champagne you ordered. I gestured to the bottle chilling beside them. That costs more than what you claimed we could afford for our anniversary dinner. By now, a substantial portion of the restaurant had gone quiet, diners pretending not to watch while missing nothing. The maitre d' hovered uncertainly nearby, clearly torn between intervening and allowing the scene to play out. I supported you, believed in you, trusted you completely. I reached into my clutch and removed my wedding ring, the platinum band with channel-set diamonds that had rarely left my finger in 12 years. With deliberate slowness, I placed a small stack of papers on the table between them, copies of all your text messages. I particularly enjoyed the ones where you complained about how demanding I am for expecting you to come home at a reasonable hour, or where you called our marriage suffocating, while I was working extra projects to pay for the vacation you said you wanted. Jason's face had moved beyond pale to ashen. Sam, please. I've already moved some essentials out of the house, I continued as if he hadn't spoken. I'll arrange to get the rest of my things while you're at work. My lawyer will contact you next week about divorce proceedings. I finally turned my full attention to Laura, who looked shell-shocked. He's all yours now, so make sure they leave it off. One of those small details you learn when you're actually living with someone instead of just sleeping with them. With that final barb, I turned and walked away. Only when I reached my car did I allow the first sob to escape, my carefully constructed facade crumbling as the full weight of what had just happened, what I had just done, crashed over me. Through tears, I started the engine and pulled away from Maison Rouge, from Jason, from the marriage I thought would last forever. I drove straight to Allison's house, just as I had promised, leaving behind the life I had known and stepping into an uncertain future. The night of the confrontation remains a blur of tissues and wine and Allison's unwavering support. I alternated between sobs that left me gasping for air and periods of numb silence, trying to process the seismic shift in my reality. Allison held space for both, offering comfort without platitudes, strength without pressure. Jason's call started before I even reached Allison's driveway, my phone lighting up with his name and picture, A happy snapshot from a beach vacation 2 years earlier. I silenced it without answering. Then came the texts, progressively more desperate. Please call me. Sam, we need to talk. It's not what you think. I made a terrible mistake. I love you. Please come home. Each message I read but didn't respond to. There was nothing he could say that would undo the past 6 months. Nothing that would rebuild the trust shattered beyond recognition. That first night alone, truly alone despite Allison's presence in the next room, was a strange limbo of grief and relief. I mourned not just the end of my marriage but the death of the future I had planned, the life I thought was real. Yet beneath the pain lay a curious lightness, as if speaking the truth aloud had lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by fresh waves of realization, practical concerns about finances and living arrangements mixing with visceral memories of Jason's expression when he first saw me at the restaurant. I awoke to 17 missed calls from Jason and the sound of Allison arguing with someone at her front door. Pulling on her borrowed robe, I emerged from the guest room to find her blocking Jason's entrance, her petite frame somehow formidable in her protective stance. She doesn't want to see you, Allison was saying firmly. You need to respect that and leave. Please, Allison, Jason pleaded, his voice hoarse. He looked terrible, still wearing last night's clothes, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. I just need 5 minutes. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain, I said, stepping into view. I saw the evidence. I heard you at the restaurant. It's over. Jason's expression crumpled at the sight of me. Sam, please. I made a horrible mistake. I'll end it with her. I already did. Last night after you left. It was just... It didn't mean anything. 6 months doesn't qualify as just anything, I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. And if it didn't mean anything, that's actually worse. You threw away our marriage for something meaningless. No, that's not. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Can we please talk somewhere private? Not in a doorway. Relief washed over his features. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. This isn't reconciliation, I interrupted. This is closure. Don't confuse the two. 3 hours later, I sat across from Jason at a small table in the busy coffee shop, an untouched latte before me. He had clearly showered and changed, making an effort to look put together, though the dark circles under his eyes betrayed his sleepless night. How long have you been planning this? He asked, his tone accusatory despite his supposedly contrite position. Planning what? Discovering your affair? I wasn't planning anything until I found your secret phone 4 days ago. His expression registered surprise, then embarrassment. I thought. The business trip. Sam. Laura and I were just working late on a project and one thing led to another. I was going to end it, I swear. When? I challenged. After the romantic anniversary dinner? After the weekend at our cabin you were planning? Or maybe after the next 6 months of sneaking around behind my back? I don't know, he admitted, staring into his coffee. I got caught up in it. The excitement, the newness. But it wasn't real, not like what we have. Had, I corrected. Past tense. Have, he insisted, reaching for my hand across the table. Every text, every lie about working late, every night you spent with her. Those were all choices you made, knowing they would hurt me if I found out. He had no response to that. Just a pained expression and downcast eyes. I'm filing for divorce, I continued. I've already contacted a lawyer. I think we can keep this relatively simple if you don't fight me on it. I don't want a divorce, he said quietly. I want another chance. That's not on the table, I replied, my voice gentler than I expected. Despite everything, hurting him brought me no pleasure. You broke us, Jason. Some things can't be fixed. He began to cry then, silent tears tracking down his cheeks in the middle of the crowded coffee shop. Once the sight would have devastated me. Now, I felt oddly detached, as if watching a scene in a film rather than my own life. I love you, he whispered. I've always loved you. Not enough, I said simply, rising from my chair. Not in the way that matters. I left him there, walking out of the coffee shop and into the bright spring afternoon, feeling the first genuine sense of forward momentum since discovering his betrayal. The weeks that followed were a crash course in dismantling a shared life. I moved into a furnished month-to-month apartment while Jason remained in our house. We communicated primarily through lawyers and text messages, the distance a necessary buffer for my healing process. The practical aspects of separation were painful but straightforward: dividing assets, closing joint accounts, notifying friends and family. The emotional untangling proved more complex. 12 years of marriage had woven our lives together in ways I was only beginning to recognize as I extracted myself. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I received an unexpected text from Laura. She wanted to meet to talk. My initial instinct was refusal. What could we possibly have to say to each other? But curiosity and a strange sense of solidarity won out. We agreed to meet at a park, neutral territory far from the scene of that fateful dinner. Laura looked different than she had at the restaurant. Less polished, more human in jeans and a simple sweater. She seemed nervous, twisting her fingers together as we sat on adjacent benches. He lied to both of us. There's more, she continued hesitantly. After you left the restaurant. After I left. He called me the next morning. He said he wanted to make things work with you. That I was a mistake. Her laugh held no humor. But then 3 days later he texted again. Asked if we could talk. Said he missed me. My stomach tightened. We talked for another hour, comparing notes on Jason's contradictory statements, uncovering more deceptions that extended beyond the affair itself. He had been gambling online small amounts, but regularly. He had lied about his position at work, claiming a promotion he hadn't received. The man I thought I knew was a carefully constructed facade. That conversation with Laura provided unexpected clarity. My decision to divorce wasn't just about infidelity. It was about building a future on truth rather than illusion. Jason wasn't just unfaithful to me. He was unfaithful to reality itself, constructing narratives that served his desires regardless of their veracity. Friends and family rallied around me in ways that both surprised and humbled me. Allison remained my rock, of course, but others stepped forward too. Others offered unwanted advice about forgiveness and second chances, not understanding that forgiveness was a process I was working through for myself, not for the resurrection of my marriage. The hardest moments came unexpectedly: finding his favorite mug in a box of kitchen items, hearing our song playing in a grocery store, driving past restaurants where we'd shared meaningful evenings. Grief arrived in waves, receding only to surge again when I least expected it. But between those waves I began rebuilding. I poured myself into my design business, taking on challenging new projects that demanded my full creativity and attention. I reconnected with friends Jason had subtly discouraged, realizing only in retrospect how he had gradually isolated me from certain relationships. 6 weeks after moving out, I discovered another layer of betrayal during meetings with our financial advisors. Jason had been withdrawing small but regular amounts from our joint savings account, almost $30. I kept returning to that night at Maison Rouge, not with regret, but with a growing recognition of the strength I'd found in that moment, standing up for myself, refusing to be diminished by his betrayal, had been a turning point not just in our marriage but in my understanding of my own worth. 3 months after the confrontation, the divorce was finalized in a sterile courtroom proceeding that lasted less than 30 minutes. 12 years of marriage dissolved in less time than it takes to watch a sitcom. I walked out with my maiden name restored and a settlement that, while not making me wealthy, provided a foundation for my new beginning. Jason tried one last time to reconnect. Just completed. Our story has an ending now, that's all. I'll always love you, he said, the words sounding rehearsed, performative. Goodbye, Jason, I answered, getting into my car without looking back. It wasn't perfect closure. Life rarely provides that, but it was enough to begin moving forward. 6 months after I confronted Jason at Maison Rouge, I stood in the middle of my new apartment, surveying the space I had created entirely for myself, creating a home that was authentically mine. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, a process that proved more draining than I anticipated despite its relative simplicity. The financial settlement wasn't everything I might have hoped for, especially after discovering additional accounts he had hidden. but it provided enough for a fresh start. Those first months of independence forced me to confront aspects of our marriage I had previously overlooked or excused. Jason's controlling tendencies had been subtle but pervasive. Small comments about my clothing choices, questions about who I was meeting for lunch, suggestions about which clients I should prioritize. Only in their absence did I recognize how these micro-corrections had gradually diminished my sense of autonomy. My interior design business became my anchor during this period of transition. I poured myself into work, securing new clients and expanding my small team to include a promising young designer who brought fresh perspective to our projects. The business grew steadily, earning recognition in several design publications and establishing a reputation for innovative yet accessible spaces. Therapy became another cornerstone of my healing process. Weekly sessions with Dr. Matthews helped me untangle the complex emotions surrounding the betrayal and dissolution of my marriage. She challenged me to examine my own patterns, not to assume blame for Jason's infidelity, but to understand how I might build healthier relationships in the future. What have you learned about yourself through this experience? She asked during one particularly illuminating session. I considered the question carefully. That I'm stronger than I realized. That I value honesty above almost everything else. And that I'd rather be alone than with someone who makes me question my reality. She nodded approvingly. Those are powerful insights, Samantha. How will they shape your choices moving forward? That question became a guiding principle as I rebuilt my life. Each decision, from professional opportunities to personal relationships, was evaluated through the lens of my newly clarified values. Did this choice honor my strength? Was it grounded in honesty? Did it support my autonomy? Reconnecting with friends became a surprising joy of my new life. I reached out to college roommates and former colleagues with whom I'd lost touch during my marriage. Many responded with warmth and without judgment, sliding back into my life as if the years of distance had been mere weeks. Through these renewed connections, I rediscovered parts of myself that had been submerged in the identity of Jason's wife. Allison remained my steadfast supporter, celebrating small victories and providing perspective during inevitable setbacks. Remember when you couldn't imagine life without him? She asked one evening as we shared takeout in my new living room. Look at you now, thriving, not just surviving. She was right. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something more manageable, less defining. The raw wound had become a healing scar, a permanent mark but no longer debilitating. Not all aspects of post-divorce life proved so positive. A business dinner with a potential client led to an uncomfortable encounter with Jason and Laura. Still together despite her earlier claims of ending the relationship, they sat across the restaurant, holding hands just as they had that night at Maison Rouge. My client noticed my distraction. Ex? She asked sympathetically, following my gaze. Yes, I admitted. With the woman he cheated with. Want to leave? We can find another restaurant. I considered the offer, then shook my head. Actually, no. I'm exactly where I should be. What surprised me most was my emotional response. Not jealousy or anger, but something closer to pity. They looked happy in a superficial way. Genuinely more interested in my dinner companion's renovation plans than my ex-husband's dating life. Dating itself remained a frontier I approached cautiously. Friends offered to set me up. Dating apps sent tempting notifications, but I maintained a deliberate distance from romantic entanglements. Not from fear or lingering attachment to Jason, but from a commitment to knowing myself fully as an individual before sharing my life with someone new. When I did finally accept a dinner invitation from Daniel, a landscape architect I'd collaborated with on a client's project, it was with clear boundaries and modest expectations. Our first date was refreshingly straightforward: good food, easy conversation, and a mutual agreement to take things slowly. My divorce was finalized 8 months ago. I told him over dessert, preferring transparency to mystery. I'm still figuring out what I want from relationships. He nodded, understanding. No pressure. I enjoy your company. The rest can develop organically if it's meant to. That approach, patient, honest, respectful, stood in stark contrast to the intensity that had characterized my early relationship with Jason. We had rushed toward commitment. As our relationship developed over subsequent months, I maintained my independence, integrating Daniel into my life without making him its center. We enjoyed weekends together, but also respected each other's need for space and individual pursuits. I told him about the confrontation at Maison Rouge, expecting judgment but receiving understanding instead. That took incredible courage, he said simply. Not many people would have the strength to stand up for themselves that way. The 1-year anniversary of that fateful night arrived with less emotional weight than I had anticipated. I spent the evening with Allison and 2 other close friends, not in deliberate commemoration, but simply enjoying their company. Only when Allison raised her glass with a knowing smile did I realize the significance of the date. To new beginnings, she toasted, and to the strength it takes to create them. I thought about writing Jason a letter that night, not to send, but to articulate all the things I'd processed over the past year. I started and stopped several times before finally setting the pen down, realizing I no longer needed that particular form of closure. I wanted to deepen my relationship with Daniel, if it continued to bring mutual joy and respect. I wanted to maintain the friendships that had sustained me through the darkest days. Most importantly, I wanted to preserve the self-trust I had reclaimed, the ability to honor my instincts, to recognize red flags rather than rationalize them, to choose truth even when illusion might seem more comfortable. The confrontation at Maison Rouge had been a definitive moment, but it wasn't the most important part of my story. To create a life aligned with my authentic needs and desires. I still occasionally dreamed about that night, standing beside their table, dropping my ring into the champagne, walking away with my head held high. But increasingly, my dreams focused on the future rather than the past. New designs for clients, potential travel destinations, a life expanding with possibilities rather than contracting with compromises. Jason had once been the center of my world. Now he was just a chapter in my story, an important one certainly. I've rebuilt my life from the foundation up, created a home and business I'm proud of, and rediscovered parts of myself I thought were lost. The pain hasn't disappeared completely. I suspect some scars will always remain sensitive to the touch, but it no longer dictates my choices or colors my future. If you're going through something similar, know that the path isn't linear. There will be days when grief ambushes you in the cereal aisle, when anger consumes your thoughts, when doubt makes you question every decision. But there will also be moments of unexpected joy, of profound self-discovery, of connections deeper than those you lost. Trust yourself. Honor your worth. Choose truth even when it hurts. The life waiting on the other side of betrayal may not be the one you planned, but it can be one you build with purpose, authenticity, and ultimately joy. What was your most defining moment of self-respect? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between comfort and truth? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to join our community of resilient souls supporting each other through life's unexpected chapters. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the ending of one chapter is always the beginning of another.